We now come to the last module for the course, where we're going to have a look at mass appraisal. Now, it's important for valuers to be familiar with mass appraisal because it's a necessary technology for being able to cope with the need to value for rating and taxation purposes very large numbers of properties. And it was something that, especially as computers were becoming more common, this goes back now a few decades, the idea of being able to use computers to deal with large databases to do the valuations automatically came as a kind of promise of saving an awful lot of work. It's important for you to read through the study guide for this module because it goes through the mechanics of how realistic that goal has been and some of the issues. What you will find is that there has been certain success and certain application, but overall the peculiarities of the way that humans do actually behave doesn't render itself totally suitable for this kind of mass approach, because simply we're not nearly rational enough and orderly enough, and perhaps our knowledge and our personal evaluation isn't as organized enough. And so while mass appraisal is very useful, you have to appreciate its limitations. As you read through the study guide, I'd recommend that you don't lose too much sleep on the mathematics. It's important to be familiar with it and to try and work it out a little bit to the extent of why is this so, but not necessarily to be able to do it or apply it yourselves. It's more just to give you a taste for what the issues are. There's also a number of readings which are available on the library website as course resources online, and so you're welcome to go to those as well because they inform the topic and give you a lot of useful background. I think for this module, it's really sufficient to have an overall understanding of the mechanics of the issue and be able to use it if you do find yourself either working for the government valuer or perhaps contracting to them, and to be able to understand the way these mechanics, these systems work. If you want to understand them in more depth, then I'd recommend going through the readings in greater detail. Overall, as the last module, it's still worth giving this your attention because it's an important topic that you will need to be familiar with in private practice and in government service, even if you're not working on statutory valuation. And the reason for this is that we're always coming across the land value, the statutory land value, as we do valuations, and it's a useful background understanding to understand just how reliable these things are. Overall, it's also useful for you to give some thought to what valuations for rating and taxing purposes really need. Do you need to have each block of land precisely valued? If you approach that question from an individual point of view, you'd say, well, I'd prefer my property to be valued lowly so I don't have to pay too much tax. If you look at it from a community point of view, well, that really defeats its own purpose, because if everybody is equally or similarly undervalued, then simply the rate of taxation, the rate of local government rates or what have you, will simply be increased to bring in the same amount of total revenue for the government or for the local government, whoever it was. And so in a sense, it's the relativities between one block and another which is important rather than the overall number. This means that for any system of state valuation for statutory purposes, it tends to be more the certainty and the overall relativity of land values rather than their absolute number, which is important. Again, because if they're all undervalued or overvalued, the organisation which is using them for obtaining revenue as rates or taxes will simply change the levy rate. And so if, let's say, the land values are only half their true value, well, instead of maybe taking 0.1% of land values, we'll take 0.2%, or 1% we'll take 2%. So we can simply adjust the fraction that is used. This means that using mass appraisal, as long as there's enough attention to individual differences, is really quite sufficient. Anyway, it's probably useful for you to look into the study guide. That will give you the bones of the topic. It will give you the core ideas. If you want to go into further reading, most recommended to go into the readings in the Library Crows.